What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Trey Codes. My name is Trey, as always, and today's video is going to be pretty special. If you haven't seen my second to last video, I talked about some software called Rowy, which is a low-code backend that allows you to handle your Firebase interactions a little bit easier. And so today what I'll be describing is how we can use that same software that I'd used in the last couple of videos in order to make a Flutter app pretty quickly and seamlessly. So the goal of this video is to show you how the Flutter app will be a recipe app, essentially, where we will use an API called Spoonacular, and we will type in an ingredient, and then from that ingredient that we typed in, we should get back a recipe, and then whenever we change that ingredient, we should get back a whole new recipe. So I'll show you how all this works on the front end as well as in Rowy. So the first thing that we need to do is create our table that we'll be using. So we'll go ahead and jump into that right now. All right, so the first thing that we need to do is we need to head over to rowy.com, which, as you can see, I'm already here, and we need to create our table, and the table is going to be called recipe. Okay, we'll keep it real simple for today. So here's the dashboard on Rowy. As you can see, we still have the table from last video, but we're gonna go ahead and select new table here. And then we'll need to specify the collection that we'll be talking about. And so the table is already in here, just for, I was demonstrating it earlier. So the recipe's already in here, but I'll just show you what it's like to create the new collection. So you would just type in the name of that collection right here, click add, and then everything else as far as display, access controls, auditing, columns, we'll leave that alone for right now. All right, so we'll just create the table first. All right, so boom, step one is already complete. Now it's saying that there is no data in the Firestore collection for recipe. Would you like to add some columns? And of course we would love to add some columns because we can't have a database without those. So we'll select add column here. And the first column that we want to add is a column called food item. And the food item is going to be essentially the item that we enter to get the recipe. So if we type in apple, that will be the food item, or blueberry, that will be the food item. So we'll call it food item. And keep in mind that the field key is what we're going to be using to determine, that's pretty much the value to know which column we'll need to be listening for to make any changes here in a little bit, but I'll explain that further shortly. And we'll keep it as short text because obviously the food item doesn't need to be a paragraph, okay? So we'll hit add. So we got our recipe table here and we got our first column, food item, but then we also need to add a column called derivative. So this column is going to be where all the magic happens. And in this column, we will be listening to the food item, and then we'll run our own Google Cloud functions to update the rest of the data for as far as title, image, and things like that. So we'll go to add column again, type in derivative. That's how you spell it, derivative, yep. And then for the field type, we'll want to come down to cloud function and select derivative. Yeah, I spelled it right. Okay, good. So we have that. So we'll hit next, and we'll leave this as undefined, which is the default value type. And then the listener fields, this is where we'll be listening to that food item column to run any code in this column right here to then update data for the rest of the row. So we'll be listening for that food item column, and then we want the output to be JSON. Okay, so our Google Cloud function will run some functions, and then it's going to return some JSON to us. So everything's good here. So we'll hit update, and then deploy changes. We'll do that later because we haven't really added any functions to the derivative just yet. So we have that out the way. There's one more thing that we need to do. So as I mentioned, we're going to be using a third-party API called Spoonacular. And so what that does is it's like a huge database with food, ingredients, you name it. Just whatever it is you need related to food, Spoonacular probably has it for you. So I've already created an account in Spoonacular. It's an API. So what you want to do is we want to get the API key and then store it in Google Cloud Secret Manager. And this is essentially how we'll store our API keys. That way they're not exposed on the front end or in any code that we're using. So here's my API key. I'm not going to show it to you because I don't want you running off with my information, but just keep in mind that you'll want to copy this and then come over to Google, the Google Cloud Platform, and then look for the security section and then select Secret Manager. So here's all the API keys. I'm saying all, I only have 2, but here's the API keys that I use that are stored here. I already have the Spoon API here, but just to show you how you would set that up, you would go to Create Secret. You would type in the name of your secret, and then the secret value is going to be that API key that we just copied, okay? You'll paste it in here. So we'll cancel this. And just know that this Spoon API is this API that we're using right here. So that's all we need for right now. In the next part, I'm going to show you what code we'll actually be implementing in the derivative that's going to do all the magic. So we're back on the dashboard. Well, we never left the dashboard, I'm sorry, but we're at the recipe table specifically, where we have our food item and our derivative. And now what we want to do is we want to modify that derivative column to have the functionality that we need for our Google Cloud function to get that recipe. All right, so in order to do that, we'll select column settings and we will come to this open square bracket right here, open this window up, and now we're ready to start coding. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to get access to that Spoonacular API key that we specify in our Cloud Manager. So we'll create a const variable, call it Spoon API, and we'll await it because it's an asynchronous call. So we'll call Rowy secrets.get, and then we'll specify the title of that key, which is Spoon API. All right, so now we have our API key. Then what we want to do is we want to call an endpoint that's going to hit Spoonacular and return a recipe based on the food item that we entered. So create a variable called const res, which is just response, await it, and call fetch, which is going to perform an HTTP request. And I copied the URL here just to save some time. So we'll paste it in there. And so what this endpoint does is it performs a query based on row.food item. So whatever row we currently are in, it's going to perform a query on that row item. And then we tack on our Spoon API at the very end, okay? So we have that. Then what we want to do is we just want to turn that res into JSON and return it. So we'll create another variable called body equals await res.json, and then return the body. I keep hitting save, I don't mean to, all right? So we got that. So then once that's done, we hit update, and now it's asking us to deploy our changes because this is a cloud function, so we need to deploy it to the cloud. So we'll hit deploy, let that build for a minute. And something to keep in mind while this is building, if you're familiar with cloud functions, you've probably noticed how you kind of have to have the dependencies, all the packages, stuff with NPM, and just all the stuff related to a deployment. It can be kind of tedious. So with this, it makes it so much simpler because now with the click of a button, I can push my whole function up to the cloud and I'm done. I don't have to worry about anything else that may give me a headache. So Rowy does a very good job of making everything when it comes to Firebase very simple. So just keep that in mind. So while this is building, I'll give that some time and we'll jump back into it in a little bit. So give me 1 second. Okay, so we got a build success. So our function is now out there and it's good for us to use. So in order to test this, we need to populate this table with some data. So we'll select add row. And we got our first row over here and we have our food item. So let's just type in lemon. All right, and keep in mind that the derivative is listening to that food item column. So as soon as we tab out of this, it should run the cloud function and return our recipe for us. So we'll tab out, let it do its magic, and looked like it had something for a second, then went away. I'm not sure why it's taking so long. I'm gonna try a different ingredient. Actually, let's try an apple. All right, so with the apple, we got a recipe for apple cake, okay? And as you can see, it's all the other information related to it, image, and some information I don't even need, summary, instructions, Weight Watcher Smart Points. It's just a lot of information that Spoonacular provides. So just know that we have everything we need to know about apple cake right here, okay? Let's try it one more time with a different ingredient. Let's try, I don't know, let's try olive. Let's see what we can get with an olive, okay? Whoops. That probably is gonna mess up some query. All right, olive, tab out of it. See it run its magic. Now remember, like I said, it's listening to that column. So if it starts acting very quickly, it's because it's like, oh, you got the ingredient, let me go search it. Like, no, I'm not ready yet, okay? So with olive, we have a recipe for olive tapenade flatbread. I think I'm saying that right. So as you can see, whenever we type in a food item and then tab out of it, it automatically runs that function to get our recipe for us. So that's the basics of how we're doing this. In the next part, I'll show you how we can create some more columns and give some more information based on the response that we got from our endpoint. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Now that we have the basic setup for our derivative function, we're going to go ahead and modify it a little bit to extract some extra data from that recipe information and apply it to the row in our Firebase database. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So we'll come back to column settings, expand this, and now we'll what we want to do is the current JSON returns a bunch of extra information outside of the recipe, but we only want the recipe itself. And so the recipe is in the results parameter of the JSON. So what we can do is create a new variable that will only provide the recipe information. So we'll call const results recipe body. So what this does is it creates a recipe variable that only is representative of the results that we get back on the JSON. Now what we want to do is we want to upload the image of the recipe whenever this function runs. And in order to do that, we'll create a variable called image uploaded, and then we will await it because it's asynchronous. Then we'll call rowy.storage.upload.url, pass in that recipe and specify the image. And then we want to give it a file name, which is going to be row.fooditem plus .jpeg. All right. So now what that does, like I said, is going to upload this image to Firebase storage whenever this runs. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Then what we want to do is we want to get the instructions on how to make the recipe from the JSON. So this is going to be some extra code here, but I'll explain all that in a second. So first we want to get the steps, and the steps are pretty much the instructions. So there's going to be several steps, and those represent the instructions for making the food. So we'll call const steps recipe, and the parameter with the instructions is called analyze instructions, and then it's going to be at the position 0. Then we'll let instructions formatted be an empty string, and then we're going to build on this instructions formatted string as we go through each step. So then we'll call steps.forEach, and essentially what this says is for each step, this is what we want to do. So we have step, number, and then I for the index, right? Okay. Oh, I'm missing something. What is this? I think I might have added extra. Okay, yeah, added extra thing there. All right, so pretty much if we're on the first step, then we want to just display the number and the step without any extra spaces. But if we're on the last step, or any step outside the first one, then we want to add some extra spacing in between it. So we'll say if I equals 0, which means we're on the first step, then instructions formatted plus equals the step plus actually let's do backticks for this. string interpolation. I think that's how you call it. There we go, backticks. So we'll say step, $, number. All right, and then the step that we're on, just like that, okay? And then we'll return. Cool. For now, on the first step, then what we want to do is the same thing, but we want to add some extra padding in between each one. So we'll do that. Cool. All right. Now what we want to do is, why is this return? Do I have an extra? I think I have an extra thing here. It's missing one. There we go. All right. So that's how we get the instructions, right? Now what we want to do is we want to actually update our database with this information that we have. And we can do this pretty simply, right? So what we want to do is we want to come down a little bit further. And then we're going to do an update on our reference, okay? So we'll call await ref.update. And then we're going to pass in the information that we're going to be uploading. So the image, of course, is what we're uploading. We want to specify that to be the image uploaded path. Then we have the title, and that's going to be recipe.title. And then we have instructions formatted, and that's going to be instructions formatted. All right, and then we return our body. So this is all we need to do on the derivative side. Now we need to go ahead and add each of these columns. So we'll hit update and deploy that. While that's deploying, we'll go ahead and add these columns. So the column that we need obviously is title. We'll keep that short text. We want the image, and we want to specify this as an image type. And then last but not least, we want the instructions, and that field key is going to be instructions formatted. And we'll make this long text because it's going to be, each instruction is going to be like a paragraph. Okay. So we're going to let our function build right now. And then once that's done, we'll test this out. So give me 1 second. Cool. So we got a build success. So that means our function's up there now. So let's go ahead and try this out. So when we change olive, let's say blueberry, it should update the other fields in our row. Let's see. Perfect. So as you can see, the title was updated to blueberry salad. The image is now this image that we have. And then we also have these instructions right here. Let's try another item real quick. Cheese. See what we get with cheese. All right. That sounds disgusting, but there's cheese pork chops, okay? And then we have our picture and the instructions as well. So based on that derivative function, we're able to completely modify our row based on just one parameter, which is the food item. So this makes it very simple to kind of modify the data on the fly without you having to go in manually or do anything on the front end with your app. You can just change one parameter and then call a cloud function. That'll do a lot of things in the back end. So this is essentially how you do it in Rowy. Let's go ahead and see how this implementation works in an actual Flutter app. So here is the Flutter app that I made for this implementation. You don't have to know about Flutter to know how this works, but I'll give a very quick and brief overview of what I have here. So I use getX for my state management. So basically we have the view, which is what you see on the screen, and then the view model, which handles all the controls. So in the view, we just have a text field up top where we enter the food item, the submit button to fire off that change of the text. And then we have the title right here, which is the title of the recipe that's brought back, the picture of the recipe, and then the instructions for that recipe, all right? And then within the controller, we essentially just fetch the recipe, set it to the view, and then when we make a change, we hit the submit by calling some extra logic to update it. So pretty much just know that it's basically, we type something in, submit it, changes it in the database, then it's updated in the UI. All right. So our last ingredient that we typed in was cheese, and the recipe we got back was cheese pork chops. Okay. So let's try this out if we type in apple. All right. So we'll hit submit, and then we get back apple cake and picture of apple cake with some instructions, right? Same the way it's working in Rowy, it's how it's working here. But keep in mind that in the app, we're only listening for changes on the entire recipe, right? We're not necessarily listening for a change to the title or the picture or the ingredients. We're listening for a change, any type of change that happens on our recipe or on the food item, on our data. Anything that happens in the row that changes, we're going to refresh the UI and update it to whatever the data is now. Okay, so that's something very cool about Rowy. Like you're not having to specifically look and see what changes on any parameter. Like it's just, no, there's a change, cool, let's update everything. Let's see an ingredient that we haven't typed in. Let's type in kale. All right, we'll hit submit. All right, kale rolls. Never heard of that before, but as you can see, it updated. I don't think there was an image brought back for this, unless this is the image, which is this little, I don't know what that is. I know what it is, but I don't know what it is. And then our instructions right here. So there you have it. That's how you can easily and seamlessly set up a Flutter app using Rowy as your low-code backend. Now that you know that you can create a Flutter app seamlessly with Rowy as your backend, I encourage you to go ahead and use this amazing software and start implementing your apps today. Something else to keep in mind, as I said before, with Rowy, it makes it very, very, very easy to implement your own cloud functions on the fly. So as you notice, we didn't have to worry about learning a new language or npm installs, dependencies and packages and things like that. All that was handled within Rowy. So it makes it very easy to just focus on the project at hand, and the backend stuff can be handled by Rowy. All right. So as always, if this video was helpful, please like, comment, subscribe. And if you have anything else that you want me to cover specifically with Rowy, please leave a comment and I'll see if I can get to that. But until next time, have a great day. I'll talk to you later.